Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about, this has been a requested video and also one I wanted to do here soon. Anyway, this is about the trauma bond. And specifically I'm going to talk about the horrors of the trauma bond. And they are many. There's a whole lot of things. So first I'm going to talk about how it came to exist, how you get trauma bonded. Then I'm going to talk about what it actually does to you. And then I'm going to talk about the third part, which is how we can actually explain or understand what the trauma bond really is at its core. So let's start with how it's created. Well, the narcissist is a master at creating a trauma bond. And I'm going to tell you at the very end how they really do it. But the trauma bond is basically this place where you're paralyzed. You are in the relationship, you had no idea what it was, you have no idea what's going on. So you're in this place called the narcissistic fog, where you're just disoriented, but within that, something else happens, and that's the trauma bond. So this is created when you are in a constant state of disarray, constantly being abused, constantly having every tactic thrown at you that the narcissist has, and basically the narcissist is always on a repetitive cycle or a loop, and for a period of time, you are drawn in and you become part of that cycle and that loop. And that loop is can be described many ways. It's the roller coaster ride. It's a toxic tug of war. It's a push-pull. It's a high-low. It's all of those things at once. So what happens to people who develop trauma bonds is they're in relationships with highly abusive people, typically. And that can be emotionally or that can be physically, but generally it's both. In some cases it's both, but generally it's at least emotionally abusive. People who are physically abusive are very rarely not emotionally abusive. In fact, it's actually impossible for me to imagine someone being physically abusive but not emotionally or mentally abusive. So anyway, mental abuse, as any clinician will tell you, can be just as devastating or even more devastating than physical abuse, depending on the severity. So what they will all do is this severe emotional abuse, where they are constantly making you wonder if you are worthy. They're constantly making you strive to prove to them that you are worth something, that you bring something to the table. And the way they do this to obtain control, which is chiefly what the trauma bond is a form of control. It means that you have come under their power and their persuasion for however long you're in the relationship. And they do this by bludgeoning you. They beat you to death with silence. They will kill you with silence. They will kill you with coldness, especially the covert narcissist. That is their master weapon. That is their bazooka, basically, that's hidden behind them. They use silence and coldness to blow you up. But there's so many other things. Because one day they'll treat you like you are the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the next day you are the scourge of the earth. An unworthy, vile, wretched piece of filth that they can't even justify speaking to. It is wild to be caught up in this. Because you just feel like you're inside a washing machine, and you're just being, spun. That's what it feels like. Because this person validates you, then they invalidate you, then they validate you, then they invalidate you. And then they love you, then they hate you. And they're going to feed you little breadcrumbs of hope and a little affection and a little mini love bomb. And then they're going to come back in and just wallop you. I say this oftentimes. This is very much like when a hawk comes in and picks up a squirrel or some other kind of rodent. And it will pick them up, and it will take them really high, and then it will drop them to the ground. Then really high, then drop them to the ground. This is what they do over and over and over. And so imagine, you don't have to imagine, you've probably been through it. If you haven't and you're still watching this channel, imagine that your head is just constantly spinning. You feel like you're in a washing machine, like a daze just comes over you. And what ultimately ends up happening is you become addicted. You are addicted to your abuser. You need your abuser to validate you. They're the only ones that can. Because you're so used to them beating you down and then coming in and being kind. And beating you down, then coming in and being kind. You see this a lot with parents and children. They will abuse a child, and then they will come in later lovey-dovey, smiles, hugs, apologies, and then they'll abuse the child again, and then they'll come back in with smiles, love, hugs, apologies. And that child just never knows what to think. And they're caught in that wishy-washy pattern. So that is what the trauma bond is. You develop this addiction to the person, this bond that's indescribable because of the abusive relationship and the way that it constantly goes in this cycle. And you just can't figure out, does this person love me or do they hate me? What in the heck is going on? So that's how the trauma bond is formed. It's that toxic push-pull pattern. Then the question is, what does the trauma bond do to you? Well, as I already mentioned, it's an addiction. But I can attest to this. I have never been in another relationship that was abusive to the point where I developed the trauma bond. Just once, and it was with the narcissist. If you have been through it, then you will understand that it is almost impossible to actually depict what it's like to be in the trauma bond. It is a toxic addiction. It is almost as though you feel yourself physically drawn to the person, like you are being pulled toward them, and you just can't escape. I have relatives who were involved with narcissists that I know, and the thing they always repeat is that I didn't think I was ever going to get away from her. That's what it feels like. Because you know how abusive, you know how awful the person really is by the time you discover that. But you'll know at the same time, I can't let them go. I know they're treacherous, I know they're awful, but I just can't let that person go. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the trauma bond is the biggest reason for that. It is absolutely an addiction. You crave the person. You can't stand the thought of not having them. The idea of them not being in your life is unthinkable. You are so heavily addicted to that person. Like I said, you feel like a physical draw. You feel withdrawal symptoms. And that only by having them with you can you feel soothed. That's why it's a drug. People who are drug addicts, that's what they feel like. Only when they get that hit, that rush of whatever drug, or in this case, the hit of dopamine, whenever you get that magical hit from the narc pipe, so to speak, it's like it all goes away. If you've ever been addicted to tobacco, you feel that physical withdrawal, that weird feeling you can't describe, like your body is just craving something. And then if you have a cigarette or whatever it is, it goes away, right? So if you've ever been addicted to tobacco, that's what happens, or other drugs. But it's like that with the narcissist. But I'm going to tell you, it's actually way worse. Because you can't describe the type of feeling. Your mind is constantly ruminating. Everywhere you go, everything you do, it is the narcissist, thinking about them. Where are they? What are they doing? You have fear of missing out, FOMO. Man, I don't know what they're doing. Who are they with? Whatever they're doing has got to be amazing. It's going to be awesome. And where are they? These are the insane things you think. This is why even very normal people in these relationships can find themselves stalking the narcissist or doing other really strange behaviors of observing them because they're just so sucked in and so addicted to needing that person. I'm going to tell you the absolute truth. Of all the things I have ever gone through in my life, and I'm not going to list a whole bunch of stuff like I'm some murderer. I've been through plenty of things. I'm sure you have too. But I'm going to tell you what, everything, and I mean everything, pales in comparison to the trauma bond. People who have gone through this will routinely tell you, I went through cancer. This was way worse. I lost loved ones. This was way worse. I was horribly ill, physically ill for however long and to whatever degree. This was way worse. I've been through other breakups and maybe a divorce after 15, 20 years. This was way worse. Oh yeah. It is the most vile and difficult thing you can ever dream of snapping. It is literally maybe the most difficult thing on the planet to break. Because like I said, it's this swirling, your head is spinning, your head is swirling, you're pining, you're ruminating. You can't, as I mentioned frequently, you can't go into the grocery store and pick out things. You can't go to the hardware store and pick out things. And yes, that's the narcissistic fog, but part of that is also the trauma bond, because you're thinking about that person all the time. You're so attached to them. And they also develop what is called soul ties. And I think this is absolutely true. You have become intertwined with a person who has demonic attachment, and you can't break free of it. It is a spiritual battle you're fighting. And that gets me to the third part of this. How would you explain being so heavily addicted to a person that you don't feel like you can function without them? Before this person, you lived your life. You could go to the grocery store. You had routines. You didn't sit and just feel like you were in a state of paralysis. When you got into the trauma bond, you entered a state of paralysis. You can't think. You can't talk sometimes. You can't hardly do anything. And you feel like if that person is away from you at all, you're just going to explode. You cannot handle being away from them. They make you codependent. If you're a strong, healthy person, when you come out of the narcissistic relationship, you're not anymore. You're a codependent. And then you have to break that. That's the healing you have to do, and I had to do, because they turn you into a codependent. And that's a bad place to be. And you do not think you can breathe without that person. If you think I'm exaggerating, you haven't been through it. Good for you. I hope you never have to go through it. It is easily the worst thing you could ever have to deal with. It takes people months, years, and sometimes never. Why do you think the narcissist has what they call the harem garage, or exes? And then sometimes they'll say things like that. I could get back any of the people I was with. I could have any of the people I used to be with. And sometimes they're telling you the truth because that person is still trauma bonded. Maybe it's been 5 years and the person is still trauma bonded. That's how strong it is. You have to figure out what the narcissist is, what a trauma bond is, and you have to do some intense healing to get out of it. But what kind of thing would fit the bill? What sort of situation could you find yourself in? Like, what describes it? What explains the trauma bond? Well, I'm going to tell you right now. The trauma bond is really the narcissistic spell, because it is a spell they put you under. It's a delusion where you think that you cannot live without this person. Well, this person's grand, great, wonderful. And even when you figure out that they're not grand, great, and wonderful, you still can't get away from them. You can't. You cannot stop needing and pining for that person. Well, you know why? Because it's spiritual. It's a soul tie, like I said. It is that you are interconnected with that narcissist in a mental and spiritual way. And because of your relationship with them and their demonic attachment, you now have, you're not possessed, you don't have demonic attachment, but you have formed yourself with somebody who does. And that starts to bleed out into you after a while. And that's why it is so hard. It's like I do this. It's like trying to break away. Because it's a spiritual, it's like they are spiritually wrapped around you. You are enveloped in this spiritual tie. And it's demonic. Remember, the narcissist cycle is a demonic cycle. It goes around and around and around. And all that changes is the person that's sucked in. And for that time, you're in that cycle. And then you discard or they discard, and someone else comes in and they're in that cycle. And every one of those people, given enough time, is going to be trauma bonded to the narcissist. Drop comments below if you have experienced this. How would you describe the trauma bond? Because I think it's the narcissistic spell. Nothing else explains the kind of poison. You feel poisoned. You feel like you've taken a venom. And you feel like you have some sort of spiritual magnet inside of you that just draws you to that person. To the point where if you don't see them for a day or two, you are just a nervous wreck. When am I going to see him? And then you do come into contact with them, it's like, oh, it goes away. This is why people have such a hard time leaving. Oftentimes people will say, and I used to be one of them, admittedly, if it's so abusive, why do you stay? Just get out if it's abusive. It is not nearly that easy, is it? I know now it's not. That trauma bond is fierce. It is wicked. And it is a spell. Because nothing else on this earth, from a natural perspective, is going to make you feel that way about anything or anyone. That you can't live, that you can't breathe, that you can't sustain your own life without that person anymore. You did pretty well their whole life before that, didn't you? And then you entered the narcissistic fog and they put the spell on you. And I'm not suggesting that narcissist does some sort of ritual. Some of them may, but I'm not saying they put an actual curse on you or a spell, but I'm saying the demons that are in charge of them, they do that to you. They have you for that time enveloped in their world to some degree. And that's why if you have the Spirit of God in you, when you were in that relationship, you felt it. How many times did you walk into the room or share a car with the narcissist or whatever it was, and you felt your spirit flaring up inside, warning against this. There's something wrong. There's something off about this person. But you didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to admit it. I felt that it was spiritual. I felt that many, many times. Something is just so off about this. But you make excuses. You sweep it under the rug because they've made you codependent. You don't think you can live without them. You've been placed in the trauma bond. And the narcissist does actually know, the narcissist may not cast a spell, but they know what the trauma bond is. Even if they don't know that term, they know what it is. And they know they place people in it. Because I heard that from the horse's mouth. They would talk about the fact that people would pine after them. People have this unnatural desire for them that they can't shake, that they could have them back in an instant. That's because they're stuck in it. And they know it. And another thing that they might tell you, like I heard, was, I know I make people act really far out of character. I know I make people act out of character. They do. They know what they do to people. They know they put them in this state. They know that the toxic push-pull pattern, the silent treatment and breadcrumbing and manipulation, and they know that that does this to people. Believe me, they know it. Don't think they don't. That's why they don't think you're ever going to leave. That's why if you discard them and you go no contact, their mind is blown. Because this is it's not how this works. How did she break away? How did he break away? They were stuck. I had them stuck. I know I did. They can't handle it. That's why if you discard a narcissist before they are ready, it is a horrible injury for them. Because they just can't believe. They thought they had you stuck and trapped. Because they almost always do. It takes a lot of strength to break the trauma bond. And not your own. Yours and God's. Not by yourself. So, I'm trying to describe to you, the trauma bond is the fiercest thing and the most wicked thing I have ever dealt with. I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. Can you put it into words? What is it like? Magnetic pull. You're nicking for this person. You're anxious without them. Just being in their presence makes that feeling go away. You feel magnetized, like you're just drawn to them. Like you can't breathe or eat or sleep, or like your life is literally going to implode without that individual. It's that bad and probably way worse. I don't have the right words to articulate it. I'm not sure anybody can. But you know that feeling. It is indescribable. So anyway, I hope this helps. Just know that if you've experienced this, it's very real. It's not made up. If people have a hard time understanding it, I get it. If you haven't been through it, you cannot really understand. You probably think I'm blowing it out of proportion. Well, I'm telling you right now, I'm not. So anyway, I hope this is helpful for somebody. It's somehow validating to know that, yeah, it's really that bad. And when you get over it, when you get over the trauma bond, which you will do it, if you put the work in and you go to God, you'll do it. You feel like you slayed a dragon or slayed a giant. You just conquered one of the hardest things on earth to conquer. And it is spiritual in nature, and that's why it's so hard. So anyway, I hope this is helpful. Drop comments below. I love to hear from you guys. Now we'll come at you with another one in a few days. Until then, God bless.